We consume a staggering amount of art every day, usually by scrolling past endless grids of glowing rectangles while sitting perfectly still. We've fallen into a trap called oculocentrism, the assumption that experiencing art is purely a visual and intellectual exercise, where we look at an object, decode a message, and move on. In the mid-20th century, phenomenologists like Maurice Merleau-Ponty shifted the focus from the object to the event, arguing that our physical response to a work is what actually constitutes the art. Merleau-Ponty introduced the concept of the corp prop, or the lived body. Rather than treating the body as a biological machine, he saw it as the inescapable feeling center of our reality. Everything we understand about the world radiates outward from our physical presence within it. To rescue art from the flat, scrolling void of our digital feeds, we have to uncover the hidden physical structures of how we actually encounter it. We have to map out the aesthetic experience. That map starts with two foundational axes. The first is time. Different art forms impose entirely different regimes of temporality onto the observer. This timeline shows the flow of a melody. Music and cinema are arts of flux. They demand what philosophers call necessary time. You cannot glance at a film the way you might a painting. You are physically trapped in the duration dictated by the artwork itself, experiencing an endless series of exact present moments. You can only make sense of that continuous flow through a biological mechanism called retention and protention. As you hear a note in the present, your mind subconsciously holds on to the immediate past, retention, while simultaneously anticipating the immediate future, protention. Without this active mental stretch, a melody would sound like a series of disconnected, random noises. Classical composers like Beethoven manipulate this structure, building massive, goal-oriented symphonies that pull you toward a grand finale. John Cage took the opposite approach. By sitting at a piano and playing absolutely nothing for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, he stripped away all future expectations, forcing the audience into a pure, unstructured present. The second axis is space. Here we find a strict divide between arts that offer an illusion of depth, like a two-dimensional painting, and arts that force your body to navigate real volume, like sculpture and architecture. Modernist buildings like the Villa Savoy dictate your movement through highly visual, geometric ramps and corridors. The architecture exists prior to you. Dance flips that logic entirely. A dancer doesn't navigate a pre-existing container. Their moving body temporarily generates its own spatial architecture out of thin air. Time and space are not neutral, empty containers that we simply happen to exist inside. They are active, physical dimensions that art forces our bodies to endure, navigate, and construct. This brings us to the third axis, corporeality. Even when you are sitting perfectly still in a quiet museum, your body is actively participating in the artwork. When you watch a dancer like Martha Graham stretch her muscles to their absolute limit, your brain's mirror neurons activate. You undergo an unconscious kinetic simulation, literally feeling the echo of her physical tension in your own muscles, bypassing the intellect to trigger pure biological empathy. That bodily reaction changes based on the specific materials the artist uses. Chipping away at a block of marble demands a slow wrestling match with heavy physical resistance. Composing a piece of music involves arranging fluid, invisible vibrations that physically resonate in the chest cavity of the listener. Because the work carries the physical traces of the artist's labor, the observer encounters another consciousness through a shared material anchor. This mutual recognition, occurring across the silence of the work, defines intersubjectivity. This silent presence can be confrontational. In performance art, staring directly at an artist like Marina Abramović can trigger a deep sense of objectifying alienation, but it can also dissolve into a moment of profound mutual human recognition. The aesthetic encounter hits with the weight of material resistance and the mirror logic of our biology, confronting us with the world as a direct physical force. But this map of aesthetic experience contains massive, dangerous blind spots. When we treat phenomenology as a universal law, we ignore historical reality. The foundational theorists of phenomenology built their rules by analyzing their own lived experiences. That means the baseline for navigating space, time, and art was almost exclusively the perspective of a white, Western male body. Thinkers like Frantz Fanon shattered that illusion. He pointed out that a marginalized or racially objectified body navigates space under entirely different oppressive rules. You cannot claim a universal experience of corporeality when society forces some bodies to exist in a constant state of defense. We see the same idealism when philosophers praise the pure spiritual truth of ancient architecture, like the Parthenon in Athens. They celebrate the geometry and the marble, completely ignoring the brutal material reality of the enslaved labor forced to haul that stone. Any philosophy of art ultimately fails if it universalizes one specific historical viewpoint while erasing the material violence that actually produced the work. Today, we face a new limitation. The rapid explosion of generative AI and virtual reality threatens the physical foundation of how we experience the world. We are living through a crisis of indexicality. A traditional photograph was a physical trace of light, proof that an object actually existed in front of a lens. Algorithmic image generation severs that tether. The image no longer proves a physical truth. Virtual reality poses an even stranger paradox. What happens to the lived body when you navigate a spatial environment that requires zero physical consequence, zero gravity, and zero material resistance? To navigate these digital simulations and historical erasures, we have to expand the map, using neuroscience to track how the brain distinguishes between simulated and actual sensation, and decolonial critiques to ground the lived body in local material realities. This expanded, open phenomenology allows us to verify truth even when the physical trace is missing. The ultimate rule remains exactly the same. Raw physical experience must always precede the intellectual concept. So close the screen, step outside, go stand in the actual physical presence of art.